country is absolutely burning to the ground, and Liberals aren't doing anything about it. And big surprise, every single time for the past 10 years that the Liberal government has been faced with these extensive forest fires, it's just burning our country. Literally, I mean, we've lost one of our most precious national parks, the Jasper National Park, to wildfires that got out of control because of massive incompetence. Our GDP apparently is growing, yet we're not putting or reinvesting any of that money into our military. Good job, Canada. And Pierre Poilievre breaks his silence on Mark Carney, the budget, and overall Liberal incompetence. Let's take a look at what's going on, starting off with the forest fires, because these are just getting absolutely out of control. A good chunk of Manitoba is completely burning to the ground. Canada doesn't have enough water bombers to deal with this. We don't have enough. I mean, look at that. You're surrounded by a lake, a massive body of water. And where's our emergency response team? This is very, very embarrassing. Thousands, dozens of thousands of people have already been evacuated because of Liberal incompetence. I'm not saying that we can prevent forest fires from happening, but what we can do is put a stop to them right when they do start. And of course, that's just not going to happen with a Liberal government. Now we're going to take a look at Canada's GDP and how it's gone up according to Stats Canada. But first, a message from today's sponsor. When I prepare my videos, I make sure that I know both sides of the story. That's why I use Ground News, and that's why I've partnered with them. Ground News is a website and app that pulls sources from thousands of different websites across the internet, organizes them by story, and shows you a visual breakdown of the political bias, ownership, and reliability. Take this story that's barely getting any attention to South Korea's bold arms deal to supply Canada with fighter jets and submarines instead of the United States. You'd think something like this would be on the front page, but apparently it's not. Ground News shows us that over 30 sources have covered the actual story. 67% of it is actually coming from the right. Left-leaning media outlets like CBC and Global News do cover the story, but they keep it surface level. Meanwhile, right-leaning outlets like 1945 dig deeper to point out the serious concerns about Canada's vulnerabilities. I actually found the story my favorite spot of Ground News, the blind spot feed, which is where I go to find out which side is or isn't covering the story. Subscribe to my link down in the description or use the QR code on screen to get 40% off the Vantage plan today. That's the exact same plan that I use. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. So our GDP grows by 2.2%, yet we don't even have adequate military or reinvestments into our military or even our infrastructure. Here we go.
Stats Can with the GDP numbers for the economy and for the quarter, and Scott is here. The expectation was things would slow because of the tariffs.
Yes.
What has happened?
The exact opposite. We're actually seeing a real resilient strength for the Canadian economy, up 2.2%. That's our annualized inflation or GDP rate for the first quarter. And this is due to a lot of imports, exports, a lot of people in the U.S. trying to skirt around the pending Trump tariffs. And so we actually saw the economy a lot stronger than the Bank of Canada and economists were predicting. So 2.2% is our new rate. That's our growth rate for our economy. March, it was up 0.5%. So with those 3 months together, that's the first quarter. That's what we're talking about. Now, exports up 1.6% in the first quarter. Passenger vehicles surged close to 17% as a lot of manufacturers tried to get vehicles back and forth across the border. We also saw industrial, machinery, parts, exports up 12%. Businesses investing in that and trying to, again, skirt around the tariffs. But exports fell in oil and gas. We saw oil and bitumen exports down 2.5%, refined petroleum products down over 11%, and household spending continuing to be strong but slowing a little bit, 0.3%, as a lot of Canadians are pulling back in their spending. A little bit of fear in as well in regards to the tariffs. We saw residential construction down close to 3%, business investment, and this is a big worry. There was down in factory buildings, structures, that sort of thing, but intellectual property, research and development also down, but business investment increased in machinery and equipment by over 5%, so a little bit of optimism there, but this might dampen the idea that the Bank of Canada will lower rates again a little bit hotter than expected, and the next decision by the Bank of Canada is on Wednesday.
On Wednesday of this week ahead, 4th of June, big day, playoffs also starting that day. Lots of reasons to watch. Scott, thank you.
I guess we'll find out on Wednesday that Canada is just going bankrupt. Our GDP can rise. We could be making more money, but our government is just mismanaging all of those funds. And no better person than to speak on this than Pierre Poilievre himself. Let's take a look at what Pierre has to say.
We were given a strong mandate with 8 million votes to pursue our purpose in this place, which is to restore the Canadian promise. That promise is that anyone who works hard gets a great life in an affordable home on a safe street. And that requires reversing the 10 years of inflationary deficit spending of the Liberal government. The Liberals are back with the same ministers, MPs, staff, and it turns out, for the most part, the same policy agenda. Earlier this week, I made it clear that we as Conservatives would vote in favor of any good policies that helped restore the Canadian promise, even if they did not go far enough or they were not as good as we would have proposed. That's why earlier this week we announced we'd support some of the government's, albeit small, tax measures. We said we would support them because they were a very small step in the right direction. And we said we will continue to do that. At the same time, we said we would vote against things that are bad for the country and that run against the platform that 8 million Canadians voted for. And that's what I'm here today to discuss with my Deputy Leader, Melissa Lantsman, whom I thank for her hard work. We ran on a platform of fiscal discipline to bring down the cost of government so that we could bring down the cost of living. But this week, Mark Carney introduced $500 billion of spending with no budget. The first time that has happened in decades. Not only that, but he's increasing government spending by 8%, with the lion's share of that spending going to bloated bureaucracy, consultants, and contractors. Bureaucracy will go up by 6%. That's more than double the combined rate of inflation and population growth. Consultants are going to go up by 37%. to $26 billion a year. The average Canadian family will now spend $1,400 on federal government consultants alone. Contractors get more money. And let's be clear, the extra spending Mr. Carney has asked Parliament's approval on is not for investments. It's for money that's out the door and gone forever, almost all of it on bureaucratic administration and other high-priced consultants. That is totally irresponsible. It's clear that Mark Carney is even more expensive than Justin Trudeau. This $500 billion spending bill will drive up inflation, interest rates, above and beyond what they would otherwise be, at a time when we've got a record increase in people who are unable to pay their bills. According to Equifax, delinquencies are up. The number of people missing mortgage payments is up. 2 million people are lined up at food banks. And we have desperation in the streets. People cannot afford an even more expensive Liberal government. And that is why I'm announcing today that Conservatives will vote against this $500 billion of inflationary, irresponsible, out-of-control Liberal spending. We continue to hold out hope the government will change direction, and that's why we're calling on them to introduce a budget this spring, like has always been done. Mr. Harper was elected in 2011 in May. He had a budget the June that followed. There's no reason why the Prime Minister can't give Canadians a plan. He said he had a plan. A plan beats no plan. He said, well, a budget is a plan, and we need a plan. We cannot simply have more debt, bureaucracy, and inflation. We will continue to work hard for the Canadian people to restore the Canadian promise so that anyone who works hard gets a great life in an affordable home on a safe street. And that means fiscal discipline, cutting bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and other excess and wasteful spending. And we call on the government to follow our lead on these. We've been leading the charge on the debate on carbon taxes, inflation, housing, resources, drugs, and crime. We want the government to finally get the message that we cannot continue to spend money we do not have on things we do not need when Canadians are lined up at food banks.
Are you worried about a challenge to your leadership, Mr. Poilievre?
No.
The Toronto Star actually, though, reported about a conservative advisor saying that you were the reason that your party lost. Are you the reason?
We got 2.4 4 million more votes, 25 more seats. We had the biggest vote count in our party's history, the biggest increase in our party's history, the biggest vote share since 1988. We're going to continue to work to get over the finish line. Thank you.
On this issue of this one economy bill that Mr.
Yes.
Carney, I think, is going to present to the First Ministers. Like, where do you land on that?
We got to see it first. There's often a difference between what Liberals advertise and what they do, but look, it is our goal is to speed things up and remove barriers. I ran on an entire platform of eliminating governmental gatekeepers so that we could get things done quickly. If that's what this does, then we'll favor it, but we have to see what they say. Our approach is look at the bill and say, is it better? Is the country better or worse off with the bill? And that's why that's what we did on the tax bill, and that's what we're doing on the spending bill. That's what we'll do on the resource bill. I would just reiterate, though, the government is not saying anything about the big problems. You have to get rid of C-69 because it blocks projects, and even if the government decides it's going to circumvent C-69 on individual projects, there will be dozens of other projects that we might not even know about because investors will not come forward as long as they risk having to face the worst approval system in the world. Get rid of C-69. The shipping ban. How are you going to have a pipeline to the West Coast if you can't ship from the West Coast? The idea would not even get off the ground unless you get rid of C-48, the West Coast shipping ban. The energy production cap means that future pipelines might not be able, the government of Canada might not allow enough production to fill future pipelines, which reduces the likelihood of a pipeline builder would come along and build it. So these sort of like picking 5 or 10 projects that the government favors, it might be better than nothing, but it's not the solution that we need to get things built. We need to repeal C-69, C-48, the energy cap, the electric vehicle mandate, and unlock the incredible power of our resources to build powerful paychecks and, most importantly, to make us independent and self-reliant from the Americans. Thank you very much.
It feels like it never ends. We just went through 10 years of a tyrannical government, and already in this new but not so new government, we're experiencing the same thing. People are fed up. The only reason Mark Carney won was because he campaigned on literal fear-mongering around President Donald Trump. And the reality is, to quote a liberal, that there's no reason to be afraid of America or the tariffs. It's all just a bunch of temporary fugazi. We should just be working on growing our economy and reinvesting into ourselves.